The CEO is a very unique animal. I'm Alex Gertsberg, and this is CEO Confidential, where we learn about this rare breed, one heartbreak, one victory, one story at a time. This show is sponsored by the law firm of Gertsberg Licata, your ally for business growth. Louis J. Licata, how are you?
Great. How are you?
Good. Thanks for appearing on this notorious podcast. Lou, you are my co-managing partner of this illustrious law firm. True or false?
True.
And prior to your term here starting, you were the CEO.
I was sentenced.
You were the CEO of your own law firm for the longest time. True or false?
Yes, true.
Okay. You were also the chairman of the board of Cozy.
Correct.
And you've held other leadership positions over the years.
Yeah, the most notable would be the global board position for the Entrepreneurs Organization.
Yeah.
That was life-changing.
So, Lou, in the spirit of CEO Confidential, tell me about the time that your law firm all but imploded.
Okay, so to give you maybe a visual analogy, imagine you go home one night expecting to have dinner with your wife, and all your clothes are on the front lawn, and there's a big sign on the door that says you don't live here anymore.
Okay.
So
for some of our listeners, this is going to hit really close to home.
Yeah. So I started a firm in 1990 with two partners. We soon ended up being three. Let me start the reverse. We started with three partners and soon became two partners. And then my partner at that time and I ran the firm for about 5 years, brought on a third partner again. And then I'll give you sort of the end, and then we can get to the details.
And how long ago is this?
Well, so 1990 I started my
Okay.
firm. I had a vision starting my firm. For whatever reason, I thought I couldn't do it by myself. And I guess that's going to be a lesson learned right away, is that you can do it by yourself. I didn't really want to do it by myself, but I didn't think I could. And I think those were two important distinctions. And at the time, I had two people who I felt would be good partners, a woman and another gentleman, Liz and Jeff. And Liz and I were friends and had worked together in an industry, in the labor employment workers' compensation industry. And she was graduating from law school, but she was very mature, way above her age and years in terms of law experience because of the profession that she was in.
Okay.
I thought she'd be a great partner. She was also a really good friend. She later became godmother to our oldest daughter. She was in my wedding. I went over her house just before I was married. I went over her house on Thanksgiving, Christmas. Like, we were joined at the hip, friends. And Jeff was also a friend. He was a lawyer for almost as long, maybe a little longer than me. He had his own practice out in Sandusky. And he brought to the picture, he had clients, but his expertise was business work, corporate work, and he had a lot of trial work. And so the triangle of success, as I saw for my clients, was that we would be able to provide them with transactions, employment, workforce issues, and asset protection. And Jeff was going to take care of the business. I was going to take care of litigation. Liz was going to take care of the employment. And that was our triangle.
Okay.
Jeff did not like being a partner. About a year and a half in, he just came to us and said, I really like being on my own. I'd really like to go back on my own, which is fine. And so it became Liz and I. And during that time, I got married and had a kid, and Liz and I were best friends. And flash forward to, we joined another partner. Wayne came on board. And there's one other associate who's worth mentioning named Terry. Terry was an associate who had bigger eyes for, like, the firm, the major firms. And so he got an offer at a firm I used to work at, and Arter and Haddon at the time. And I said, I don't know if you'll like it there or not, but if you get there and you don't, give me a call. And within 30 days, he called me and said, can I come back? And he really was uh, almost apologetic about asking to come back. And so we brought him back, and he was a key player. And so now we get to the point where my two partners, Wayne and Liz, decided that they wanted to continue the firm without me, but they didn't tell me that. And we were moving our offices June 1st of 1996. And in May of 1996, they called an out of office meeting at Liz's house, a safe place for me, a place I had been many times. And I drove over there thinking that we were going to be finalizing the move to the new building and, talking about a number of business issues. And I got there and they told me that they were going to continue without me. And they basically told me that I was going to be able to keep my car and I should just be happy and go on with my life. And I zoomed back to the office, ready to go in and take control of the office, and all the locks were changed.
Oh man. And how other than the three of you as attorneys, how big a team did you have at that time?
Oh, we had a pretty good sized firm. I think we were at about 12. I think we had 7 lawyers and 5 staff.
Okay.
That's about right.
Okay.
We were doing great. So our firm was on fire. Our firm at that time was literally the firm to watch. We had just secured a big contract with Cozy to do all their workers' comp. I was bringing in work left and right. Liz was very good at client development.
What do they give you as the reason? Slow down on the conversation.
Yeah. When you hear that, it's like your body just goes into shock.
Yeah.
Like you can't believe what you're hearing. And I'm not even sure what my initial reaction was. It was literally as cold as could be. And one other piece that is important is about Wayne. Wayne was a partner at Arder and Haddon. And Wayne wanted to join our firm, but he wanted us to kind of get it started before he would join it. And we brought Wayne in. And as soon as we brought Wayne in, Wayne went on a disability leave for a year, medical disability leave for a year. We did not cut his compensation. I covered all of his cases. And when he came back, it just stung even more so that he would be part of this, what I'll call a conspiracy.
Mutiny.
Yeah. But the one thing I do, so it was really pretty much, here's your letter, which was a half-assed letter with like assets and liabilities that basically said the company wasn't worth anything and I got to keep my car as a gesture of goodwill. And the only thing I remember saying, and not only do I remember saying this, but my partners remember me saying this because they've mentioned it to me many times since. On the way out the door, I said, "This is the biggest mistake either one of you have ever made."
They said this to you?
I said that to them.
Oh, you said this to them?
Yeah. I was I was young and angry and like I was not going to let them get away with this. And I drove back to the office. And they're gone. There's nobody there.
Yeah.
Well, I find out later that Terry, my loyal friend Terry, who I was supposed to golf with the next morning, had shepherded everybody out of the office to a restaurant for a meeting. And at the meeting, they announced the name of their new firm. And they told everybody that I had decided to move on and pursue other ventures.
Wow.
And that's what they started doing to the clients too. They started calling the clients, like my top clients, they called. Now, the only one, and I won't mention names, but one of my really top big client, they didn't call because they knew better. They knew.
Lou, I still feel like we're glossing over the reason that they gave you, unless they didn't give you a reason.
That was the part that was so like,
okay.
Like they just said, we've decided to move on without you.
Did you later come to discover what the real reason for it was?
Yes. I mean, there's a combination of things. So a year before that, we had some very contentious interactions between the three of us.
Okay.
Or amongst the three of us. I thought some of that might have been because Wayne was out on disability, but it was really bad. Like it was, I did not want to go into work. And it's my firm, and by the way, what I just said, it was my firm, was part of that problem, because I just viewed that
Yeah.
whole operation as my firm.
Were you like the founder in
Yeah.
terms of the idea for the
Yes.
firm?
Yes.
Okay. But all three of your names were on the,
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, Wayne's firm was, Wayne's name was not, so originally it was the three of us, and then Jeff left and it was just me and
Got it.
Liz. Wayne's name didn't go on until, so Liz is very clever. And Liz said, we'll get Terry because we need Terry. And then the firm will be the name, our three names, right? And Wayne was like, okay, right? Because my name's going on the door. Why not? Sure.
Okay. So
Yeah.
you go back, the
Yeah.
locks are changed,
Yeah.
the people are gone,
Yeah.
stuff's gone. They've contacted
Oh.
your clients, they've
Yeah.
talked to the other employees. What happens next?
Well, I went across the street. At the time, my wife was a public defender. She worked right across the street. I went across the street and told her what happened. And I couldn't believe it. I'm sitting there like, and so I called, the first person I thought to call was Mary Pilla, who was at the time general counsel at Nestle. And I called her and told her, for a couple of reasons. One, I wanted to know if they had called her, if she knew what was going on. I wanted to protect that relationship, but also I valued her input. And she said, you got to get a lawyer. And now this is really, you talk about serendipitous, or a few weeks earlier, I had run into Tom Loby. I don't know if you know Tom Loby. Tom Loby was an old civil prosecutor, great guy, went out on his own practice, jumped in with about 3 or 4 other guys. And it was a classic solo practitioner group where they all shared stuff. And Tom was one of those guys that everybody loved him. Like he was a straight up, just a straight shooter. And I remember telling my wife at the time, if I ever get in trouble, I'm going to call Tom. Like if I ever get into real trouble. Actually, I was thinking like more criminal than I was civil, but I thought, you know what, I'm going to call Tom. And I called Tom and I met with Tom over the weekend. And that Saturday morning, I was supposed to golf with Terry, and Terry said, sure, we could still golf. Well, it was a pouring rain. So we met and I asked him a bunch of questions, all of which later came back to help me in the litigation. But Terry kind of gave me it's just business. It's just business. It's not personal. I still think a lot of you and I appreciate everything you've done for me, but this is just business. And, because he was made a partner. So it was a good trade-off for him.
So I'm not going to ask you questions about the litigation. I think it ended up in a settlement.
Well, that's an important piece of
okay. I don't want to.
I won't get through I won't go into any of the details of litigation. I mean, I will say that we filed an action Monday morning. So I went in Saturday, talked to Tom. This happened on a Friday. Between Tom and I, we got together a complaint for injunction. We went in and filed it, served it personally, and there was a hearing, and they brought out, like they said some things that were just really wrong and not true. They said that I had committed, this is really confidential. So, but
and that's, although this is,
I know, but that's okay, because
to the extent if there's a settlement at the end.
No, it was okay. None of this, but they started with that I was sexually harassing the women and the women clients at the office, right? Which was just absurd. And something else about, there was all these sexual harassment type things or innuendo. So we were at the hearing. I immediately said to Tom, you got to tell my wife, right now, tell my wife what they said in there. And she was like, that's just bullshit. My wife was more mad about it than I was. So, that was good though, because it really showed to me they had nothing. They really had no reason. And even the judge said, every time they'd start to explain why, they'd say, well, he was impossible to work with, and he was disrespectful, and he was, the judge would say, but you locked the doors. You changed a lot. The judges always said, but you locked the doors. He's a named partner, and you locked the doors.
Yeah.
But it didn't matter. We got a partial restraining order injunction, and we ultimately settled the case at a mediation. And the only reason that case settled, because I was hell bent on going to trial, because I knew that my opponents, my ex-partners, would never want to go to trial. And so I was like going to make them eat it. I was going to make them go to trial.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And the only reason I didn't is because our mediator, Nikki Schwartz, who's one of the finest,
It's fantastic.
and considered to be one of the best mediators ever. He mediated that case. He told me years later, he will tell you today that it was one of the hardest cases he's ever mediated. And he mediated that prison riot down in Lucasville.
This was in the 90s.
This was 90.
still
By now we're doing 98.
He was still trying
Yeah,
cases back
he was.
then.
He was.
Anyway, yeah.
In fact, Nikki and I had a case together, which was very interesting. But I trusted him.
Yeah.
And what he was able to do was able to make me look at myself and my contribution to the failure of that partnership. And nobody else could have done that. But he was able to do that. And I could see whether I agreed or disagreed with, like certainly to me, that was no reason for them to do it the way they did it.
Yeah.
But I could appreciate that. And he said it very interestingly. I mean, he was asking me some questions and I was pounding, like I was making the argument about what the hell, like, how could they dare? I did this, I did this, I did this, I did this, I did this. He goes, maybe that's the problem. Maybe you never treated them like partners, and that was like a moment where I was able to look introspectively and think, you know what? I probably didn't. I never saw them as equals. I never respected them as equals. I thought they had value. And I wanted to be in a partnership, with them, but I didn't have going in that mindset or respect. And I remember a funny comment. Liz said to me once, she asked me a question, I gave her an answer. She goes, will I ever be as smart as you? I said, yes, you'll be as smart as me, but by the time you're as smart as me, I'll be a lot smarter. And I think, you know what, I really didn't have my ego in check. I mean, I was younger. It was I was just out of big law firms and this was my firm. I wasn't going to let it fail for anything.
Yeah.
I wanted it run a certain way. And so I think there was a lot of.
Well, and I have to believe that you're worried about your reputation at that time.
Sure.
Too, right.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So Lou.
Yeah.
It's interesting to me, and I think you and I have talked about this, how you and I have both learned how to become better partners through our prior failed partnerships.
Sure.
And that's one lesson. And it's interesting to me that it took litigation, it took extreme contentiousness, it took a mediator to have you sort of look at yourself differently.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And that was not to the point of litigation, but it took a lot of emotional just falling down for me too, right? My question is, looking back on that journey, and certainly for people who are in a similar place, can you see it playing out differently?
Yeah, I can. I think that first of all, I mean, this was before I ever knew about, all these books on management and leadership, and I wasn't a member of EO, right? I mean, I learned, but what happened, interestingly, there was a program at Case called the Professional Fellows Program. And you went through the program, after 2 years, you got inducted into the Professional Fellowship Society. It was part of the Weatherhead School of Management Executive Educational Series.
Right.
I wanted to do that. And I remember when I saw the materials for it, I thought my partners will never let me do this. Well, then the blow up occurred. And first thing my wife said was, well, now you can go into that program. And I did. And that program opened up my eyes to like this whole side of business that I never, of organizational behavior that I never thought about. Core values was the biggest, right? Core values, because what I realized looking back is that my partners and I had different values and different long-term visions for what we wanted.
Right.
Liz did not want to be a full-time lawyer with a firm that I wanted. She wanted to have a place. She wanted to be an owner. She was very good at it, but she wanted to have a family. She had a whole different set of priorities, whole different.
Yeah.
And our other partner had different values too. And so absent those core values, we were never in alignment.
Right.
We were always out of alignment. And when you're out of alignment, then you start to misread behavior, and that breeds trust issues. And I mean, it's just a domino
Yeah.
effect.
Well, and we talk here about emotional intelligence a lot,
Big.
right? I'm certain in my own case, I lacked it. And I was told that to my face, and they were right.
Yeah.
How has your emotional intelligence grown or changed over the years, and how much of it was as a result of that?
Well, it's huge. So the program that I jumped into, the fellowship program, half of it was soft stuff. The other half was hard MBA stuff. So we got the whole EI, emotional intelligence, and appreciative inquiry from Cooper Writer. And we got it right from those guys. Scott Cowan was there. David Bowers was there. Like, I felt like it was just the best. It was great timing. I stepped into this program that was on the front end of everybody's sort of management learning process. And I did discover gaps. Not that I didn't, this was the interesting thing about the EI and the appreciative inquiry, is not that I didn't have those skills, that I wasn't aware or connected to them in a way that was useful. Like, I didn't know how to use them. And so, like anything, once you become aware of something, then you can work on developing it. And that's what I did. And I mean, I still have a lot to learn, but I'm light years ahead.
Yeah.
And I think it has made for a much more success going forward, and much better relationships.
So the other thing that I noticed, you said that Liz, you were best friends. She was the godmother to your daughter. I assume did you guys ever mend?
Yeah. So I still had a serious amount of revenge in my ethnic body. And I was hell-bent on prying that contract out of Liz's hands from Cozy, because I felt like the only reason we got that contract was because that contract was so valuable that when we got that contract, the old labor firm that doesn't exist anymore. Remember the name of that firm?
Yeah.
Why can't I remember the name of it?
Rotori?
Yeah.
Wasn't that his?
Not it was
Gregel. It was something Rotatori and Gregel, wasn't it?
No, it was oh my God. It was a bunch of guys that literally Jones Day kicked out to start the labor practice. And they started it, and it took off.
Oh, Duvin Khan. That was
there
it.
we go. Duvin Khan, those guys met with us and wanted to acquire our firm. They wanted our firm to merge in with their firm. That's how valuable not only that contract was, but that's how we had made a mark. Like, we were out there. Other firms like McDonald Hopkins, if you were asking, like, who do you beware of? So, I guess where was that question from?
Whether you mended your relationship with
contract.
Liz.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Because I became chair of Cozy, as you said. And when I became chair of Cozy, Liz reached out to me and said, could we have lunch?
Yeah.
Her biggest fear being that I was going to yank that contract because I was the chair of Cozy.
Oh, because it went with the firm.
Right.
Okay.
The contract stayed with Liz.
Got it.
Yeah.
So did you guys make up after that?
Actually, so you'll love this, because Liz's firm, Liz and I make up. I became chair of Cozy. Liz and I make up. Her firm breaks up very badly. But she came to me and she said, I didn't do this right the first time. I need your help to do it right the second time.
Wow. Yeah.
And then she was on her own. And being on her own, she started looking for places to land. And when she got some offers, I said, that's ridiculous. Why would you go there? You could come work with me and make twice as much money. Because, our compensation formula that you and I kind of have a similar formula.
Mm-hmm.
I just ran her numbers through the formula. And she rejoined my firm.
Oh, wow.
In 2008 as a associate.
Yeah. It's interesting.
Yeah.
Where I was going with that question, that was actually a side question. Where I was going was, I wonder, I look back on my early years in business and see nothing but confirmation bias, and see nothing but just biases, right? You want to believe
Yeah.
that things are going to work out great,
Sure.
and you only see the confirming evidence, not the disconfirming evidence. And what makes your story stand out to me is you guys were already close friends.
Yeah.
She was already the godmother to your,
Well, she was after we
or
started the partnership.
she became, but you guys were
Yeah.
already very
Yeah,
close,
we were very
right?
close. We worked
But you
together. Yeah.
lacked the same values,
Yeah.
right? So
Business values.
right,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
So have you become more careful, or do you view your biases differently now than you did back then? Or am I way off base?
No,
And
no,
that
no.
was not even an issue.
I appreciate the question. Confirmation bias, it can work against you too. It can be and I think this is like round two of the firm, right? So I
Yeah.
start the firm in 90. I go through this. I start over. I get the Weatherhead school under me. So now I'm doing things that nobody else is doing, right? Colored letterhead logos, paperless office, which in 1997, 1998 was crazy.
Right.
Email invoicing. I mean, we start
Yeah.
and we're having a lot of fun. We're doing great. We're growing. But I need to grow, right? But I'm afraid to grow. I'm afraid to acquire partners,
Right.
because of what I went through.
Yeah.
So
PTSD.
I'm blocking myself
Right.
from bringing other people on in a capacity that I need to bring them on. And I'm at an age, and I actually almost merged with another firm, and it took a lot. But my requirements of that merger were so protective that, like, I was merging with 3 other partners. It would have been a 4-partner firm, and I was going to, like, have a veto power because I was worried that 3 of these guys were going to outvote me all the time.
Right. Right.
So I think it works to the opposite too. I think, one, it can lead you down the same path of making bad decisions, or 2, it can block you from opportunities.
Yeah. We can keep talking about this forever. That's a great story, Lou. I appreciate that you shared it.
Sure.
We probably will be talking about it. As our partnership, I was just thinking, as our partnership evolves, I mean, we've been working together for a year and a half, but our formal partnership is only one fiscal quarter old as of June 30th.
Yeah.
So, I definitely have learned a lot from my own mistakes. I know you have too. So it'll be interesting to see.
This was never possible without those learning lessons. And then also having the access. One of the things the Weatherhead School taught me was there's like, you've got to have a learning plan, right? Ongoing forever. And so that was the EO, getting into EO and getting into a learning plan so that I could learn about things that would save myself from that kind of disaster. And remove the blockers, and none of what you and I have and are heading towards would be possible without those events and those experiences.
Yeah, folks, Lou Licata is the co-managing partner of a fantastic law firm called Gertsberg Licata. You can go to gertsberglicata.com and learn more about his incredible organization. We will see you next time. Thanks, Lou.
Yeah, thanks.
Thanks for listening to CEO Confidential. I hope you enjoyed it. Visit us at ceoconfidential.net and visit our sponsors, the business law firm of Gertsberg Licata and Cover My Six, a business solution that flushes out and repairs legal minefields before they blow up in court. We'll see you next time right here for another episode of CEO Confidential.